Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later because I've got something to tell you. I love rescue bots. I always thought it was a really good introductory way to kind of bring young kids into the Transformers brand, and certainly me and my son had a great time watching the cartoon back in the day when he was a bit smaller. He also had a fair few of the toys, which yes are very simple by their nature, but also quite impressive actually for how they took that one-step transformation but delivered a real dose of fun. He got tons of mileage out of them and still kind of enjoys them now. So let me tell you, it's really strange seeing some of the characters being brought back in more detailed mainline form, and I can only assume that for 8-year-olds this is a bit like seeing your first ever masterpiece Transformer. But anyway, I'm all for it personally, and I cannot wait to check out Heatwave today, thanks to the fine folks at transforverse.eu, a European Transformers site with tons of robots in disguise in stock. You'll find an affiliate link down in the video description below. We're going to kick off today by talking about this vehicle mode, and let me just first of all say that it's a bit of an oddity. For one thing, it sort of has that simplified Rescue Bots vibe to it, you know, which I think a lot of that is down to the kind of shape and size of the cab. It looks a little bit kind of play school if anything, but not in a bad way. But the back end is actually surprisingly complicated though. Like, it's when you come around here that you see all this kind of bump and mess that maybe wasn't obvious on previous versions of this mold because they were always kind of covered over by this sort of tarp thing going on here. But you know, here you can see the hips, this kind of bit here, it's a little bit unsightly. Like this flap especially I find a little bit egregious. Now this is where on the bulkhead and breakdown versions of the mold that tarp sort of pegged in, as I say, but here it doesn't really do anything. It just sort of sits there, so it feels a little bit out of place. And in the robot mode, that's what the ladder pegs into, just there to kind of keep it in place, except here you have to kind of plonk the ladder in at this sort of angle to, well, essentially replicate the look of the Rescue Bots toy. So that's all really strange because it ends up being a parts forming piece for the ladder where you feel like a better solution could have been employed here to avoid all of that. I mean, again, it's once you stack up this guy versus previous uses of the mold like breakdown that you'll see just how much stuff that tarp is covering. You know, it kind of eliminates all the ills, as it were, whereas on Heatwave, it's all just kind of there on display. Even silly things like the robot mode feet, which are all too obvious at the back here on Heatwave, I think it kind of gets lost a little bit with the way it's covered over there, you know, on breakdown. It just looks a little bit more tidy. Again though, it's this whole bit in the middle that kind of loses me. It just looks so messy and unfinished, and honestly that's because it is. I mean, this whole bit was to obviously hold the tarp in place, and with that no longer there, I just kind of feel like something different could have been done with it, you know? Anyway, it's really not all bad here, because honestly the cab section looks great. Really love the kind of blue translucent window, the silver on the front here is really nice, the yellow highlights are well applied. The white paint on the trim around the window does look a little bit thin though. I think that could have been thicker. You can kind of see the red bleeding through ever so slightly. I also find that for such a sort of big chunky vehicle mode, it really doesn't like roll very well or kind of hang together. Like there's a lot of kind of fiddling that's required to get it all sort of sat stably and flush, and I just cannot get it to roll for love nor money. All of which makes it a really strange prospect, to be honest, because it sort of captures the look and the vibe of the original, you know, that kind of big chunky aesthetic to it, but not the feel. You know, it kind of doesn't quite have that playability that you expect from Rescue Bots. And obviously, yes, this is a Generations toy, but I don't know, it just feels too fiddly for me. But you know, considering this is a retool, they have certainly captured the look of it, at least. And I should stress that my son's copy of Heatwave here, the original, is lacking the ladder. That got broken off some time ago, many years ago during play. I forget exactly how it happened. But, you know, needless to say, the new version does at least get the look right. On the whole, anyway, barring some of those kind of fiddly panels and things. And I can't deny, it is genuinely fun to see him and Chase together in Generations form, right? Like, these two toys, they do stack up nicely together in their vehicle modes. There is a thrill to that, even if, yes, there are some quibbles to be had about Heatwave themselves, and I do think it'll be fun if they do Boulder and Blades as well. There is also some weapon storage to be had, because you can peg these little translucent blue pieces onto the sides of the fire engine, and that works pretty well. I like how they're kind of water themed, if anything. Alternatively, you can sit them at the back here atop the ladder, but I actually don't think that looks as good. It looks just a bit messy for my liking. Anyway, all told, I'm not sure this is the greatest vehicle mode, but we've still got transformation to go, and it's pretty simple. You just pull forward slightly and jobs are good. And that's the wrong toy, isn't it? Yeah, the age of the Primes version is a little bit different. The first thing you want to do is actually remove that ladder, and then round the back here you just want to flip those feet down and get the heels out as well. It's then time to untab these grey pieces at the side and kind of fold the whole leg back, and then exactly as you found on previous versions of the mold, that whole grey piece just folds round into the back of the leg and then just close that back up. Then you've got this whole bump under here, so you just want to pull all of that down, just untab it, kind of fold this little red section round, and then start to move it all into place like so. You've also got this little red panel just there that needs to be folded up, and then the front cab section can just be lifted up to reveal the arms. Now the arms just want to be rotated out of the way and then kind of split them in the middle just there. And you've got these hinge sections on the back there, so you just want to rotate the arms all the way up, the shoulders kind of fitting to there. Easier to do with the cab still raised. Meanwhile, inside here, you just want to push that top section of the cab in. It's quite stiff to do, but that just folds to the front just there, and then that will enable you to bring the head up, and then it's kind of into place for when you fold the whole cab section down to kind of lock in just there at the waist as well, which means that by now the shoulders should be in position to just kind of click into place. Then you want to make sure that this section is just tabbed in right there. You then want to come back to the ladder and just fold this little peg up in the middle, and of course the ladder will just kind of tab in there like so. And then you're done, and honestly it's really not too bad. I've heard lots of people say that they outright loathe this transformation, but I've never really found it that complicated, and in this case I do think the robot mode that it spits out is kind of cool as well actually. It's got a very distinct vibe to it. Like, say whatever you want about these Generations Rescue Bots updates, but they've definitely swung into the vibe of them, right? With like the head sculpt and just the general aesthetic as well. I feel like they've really kind of captured it quite nicely, you know? It's very unapologetic in some ways. I mean, I adore that head sculpt. They've just captured the characters so well. It looks pretty much spot on to the cartoon. And I'm also really a big fan of the light piping on offer here, because just look at that. You can see his little eyes inside the kind of visor mask thing that he's wearing, and that is quite spooky but very cool as well. It's some of the best light piping I've seen in a little while actually. There's also quite generally quite a nice finish going on here. Some sections such as the shoulders are actually painted red, which is really nice. Lovely shiny silver that's all really nice and crisp as well on the legs. Also some rather lovely yellow and silver on the wrists just there. That looks great. And of course the whole chest section is just the front of the cab, but for what it's worth that does look really good here. So yeah, in total I gotta tell you, I think this is a really nicely presented robot mode, and it's pretty much perfect actually in terms of how it reimagines Heatwave in a kind of Generation style. At least it would be were it not for one rather glaring thing. You see, much like the original toy, the new Heatwave has these sections on the sides of the fire truck, but when this one transforms, that's what becomes his fists very clearly, and it kind of leaves the sides of the body a little bit tapered just there. Except that's not how it works on the new Heatwave. Because it's a retool, these sections can't move out to become the hands, so you end up with these kind of faux headlights on the sides, which do look nice. They look really, really nice. But actually you've got what is essentially supposed to be his hands and his knuckles and everything just here, still in place. And look, that might sound nitpicky, I get that, and it's really not a deal breaker by any means, but it is just kind of one of those things that I simply cannot unsee whenever I look at this toy. You know, it's just like front and center, and it does kind of give him a little bit of a weird dad bod as well, which isn't necessarily very Heatwave. That's much more bulkhead, but still, you know what, it does look really good overall. There is some good play value as well. I mean, for one thing, the ladder can be detached from his back and then pegged into his arms. And yeah, it's a little bit on the short side, but it does still kind of give those Rescue Bots vibes. You've then got those two very cool weapons with the kind of translucent blue on offer, including this axe, which I do think looks really, really nice in hand, and this super cool kind of water blaster, you know, which is just really nice actually. It's a really good effect going on there. I like how that looks a lot. And aside from the head sculpt and the color scheme, it's really those weapons which help to differentiate him from previous uses of the mold. And I know that not everybody is absolutely in love with this design, but I actually think this is a fairly good outing for it. I agree, there are definitely some oddities in that vehicle mode, but by and large, the robot mode kind of makes up for it. Again, I think it's just a real delight to see these Rescue Bots characters being brought back in kind of Generation style. I think they're such good characters, it would have been a shame to leave them on the shelf, and they are kind of being given their due here. Yes, they're maybe not perfect, but they're still pretty good fun, I gotta say. And it's cool to think of them now as like fully fledged Transformers characters. Not that they weren't before, or that Rescue Bots was not valid, but you know, they're kind of being brought into the mainstream, as it were, and put alongside all of the other characters from different universes that Legacy and now Age of the Primes is kind of tackling, and I think that's coming together really well in this case, and as I say, I hope they do the rest of the gang. Even if they don't, by and large, I've had a good time with Age of the Primes Heatwave. I don't think it's going to be one that I transform too often, but the robot mode is pretty great. Love that head sculpt, and you know what? Overall, is definitely going to stay, so it's a toot. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this video is brought to you by Transforverse.eu, a European Transformers specialist who have got absolutely tons of robots in disguise in stock and available for pre-order right now. You will find an affiliate link down in the description below, so go and check it out and you will get the occasional discount as well, so what's not to like? Otherwise, I'd be very grateful if you could drop me a like for today's effort, please, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, but otherwise, that is it from me. So have a great rest of your day and roll to the rescue.